On today's episode, Ivica Zubac makes his debut against the Phoenix Suns as, of course, the Pacers lose another game, but I'm going to break down what I saw from Zubac on the offensive end of the floor, defensive end, what I really liked, what things I think he can maybe improve on going forward, but all in all, excited to see him back on the court for the Pacers for the first time, of course. And then I wanted to talk about past drafts. And I mean, what I mean by that is I want to talk about teams that finished with the worst record in the NBA. Where did they end up picking in the lottery since the flattened odds became a thing back in like 2018 and 19? So I'm going to dive into that after I break down Ivica Zubac's game tonight. All coming up next on the Pacer Pulse podcast. What is up, Pacer Nation? Welcome to the Pacer Pulse podcast, the heartbeat of Indiana basketball. I'm your host, Sean Trader. And guys, I'm sorry for another long hiatus. My move took a lot longer than I expected, and we had a lot of things to do still. So as you see behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, guys, it's still kind of a mess. So it's still a work in progress, but I appreciate you guys sticking it out and understanding. If you guys have are watching this episode now or listening to this episode, I really appreciate it. But just wanted to give like a reason as to why I've disappeared for like a week, let's say. So like I broke it down in the beginning of this episode, I'm going to talk about Ivica Zubac. So, makes his debut against the Phoenix Suns. So, I think it was yesterday or so, he got upgraded to questionable on the injury report. So, we knew it could be any day that he was going to play his first game. And I think this was a good introduction. I mean, the Suns are a good team, but I do think that playing at home, of course, I think that was just the right move to kind of ease him back in. And just to like lead this off, Pacer Nation, he only played 16 minutes tonight. So, it's not like we got to see Zubac in a huge sample size here. And plus, Nembhard was the only other starter that actually played in this game outside of like Neesmith sat out, Siakam sat out. Of course, Halliburton's been out. I mean, Jarris Walker played, of course, so if we count him. But if I'm just picturing like the actual starting five he's going to play with next year, Nembhard was the only guy he got to play with. So it was a little mixed bag in terms of like the guys he's actually going to be really seeing legitimate minutes with, because we were still like clearly trying to lose this game as well, but also try to like still get Zubac on the floor and see what he can bring to this team and just see how he's going to fit. And obviously, we're not just going to let him sit the rest of the year and not get any playing time under his belt for the team. So, all in all, I thought it was the right decision. But just what I really liked from Zubac in this game in his debut, I thought he looked comfortable actually getting up and down the court. And maybe it wasn't like as slow as I expected. I don't think it was like just a disaster, of course. I thought he actually kept up with the pace pretty well. It didn't seem like the team really slowed down a terrible amount. It just seemed like he kind of blended in, and it didn't seem like he stood out like a sore thumb, if you get what I'm saying. I know he's not like the fastest big man in the NBA. He's not the quickest, I would say. But I didn't think it was like that egregious to where it just looked awful. And I just thought his movement looked solid on both ends, but he wasn't forcing anything on offense either. He did finish the game with 8 points. And I'll go over some of the baskets that he had and whatnot. But all in all, I thought he looked very comfortable out there, even though he hasn't played for a while. Was still kind of nursing that ankle injury still. And you could tell they're going to ease him back into this, because why would we play in 30 minutes a game when we're already out of playoff contention now? And it just wouldn't make any sense, Pacer Nation. So if you get what I'm saying. But his first basket of the game, Zubac, of his Pacer career, was off an Ethan Thompson drive and an alley-oop pass to Zubac, who finished the alley-oop for a dunk. So it's just kind of refreshing to see that we actually have like a vertical lob threat. So it's kind of nice that we have him out there that can catch lobs, and then Jay Huff obviously can as well. But it's just something we've never really had for the past 10 plus years. Somebody that can catch those kind of lobs. Because if that would have been Miles Turner, he would have like bring it back down on the ground. Defense would have recovered in time, maybe stopped him from finishing a layup. You get what I'm saying? So it was nice to see that he was able to just finish the alley-oop, but it was a beautiful play by Ethan Thompson too. But just something that really stood out to me. And then he had one play where he had an offensive rebound, and then he just made the perfect pass to Jarris Walker, who was cutting down in the middle of the lane, who finished with a dunk. So I actually was pretty impressed with Zubac's passes tonight too, where he was making the right reads, and he was trying to make the right reads a few times where like a few defenders got a hand on the ball and it ended up going out of bounds, and we still kept possession of the ball. But all in all, I thought he was making like some really good passes, some really good reads, and I thought that was going to be an underrated skill of his that was going to really add value to this team. I think he's a pretty good passer. I'm not saying he's throwing people open. He's not like some bonus level passer probably, or even some of those higher level bigs, of course. But like he is somebody that can get you like 3 to 4 assists in a game. I think from the center position. So I think he's going to be very additive in that aspect. And then I do think that, like I said earlier, I thought he was pushing the pace pretty well, and he was just getting up and down the court pretty well. And I know they've been really working on it, his conditioning and whatnot, since he's been with the team, which we already know. Like Jay Huff had to go through all that too because he's never played our style of play. So obviously Zubac is going to have to go through that as well, and it's going to be a learning curve. It's going to take some time for him to get in full game shape the way the Pacers like to play, but I wasn't like fully discouraged by like his speed of the game. Maybe it was just me. If you guys have a different opinion, please let me know in the YouTube comments, but I actually didn't think like it looked that bad on like just him running up and down the court. So he also had another basket where I think it was off a pick and roll. I can't remember, but he got the ball like right inside the free throw line. Then he had a nice little push, kind of like push shot, and made the shot inside. I thought that was a beautiful play. And then he had another nice basket where he got the ball inside where he had somebody sealed off, and he finished with a left hook shot or a right hook shot. I can't remember which hand, but he had a couple of nice hook shots in this game to kind of get all his points in this game after those other baskets I mentioned. But it's just nice to see he's a guy that you could throw the ball into inside, and he's going to make something happen because he's very good at sealing guys off as well because he's such a big guy. So you could easily tell where Nembhard was able to just lob it into Zubac a couple times where he was at least able to try to make something happen, or maybe like the defense kind of forced him to miss a shot or something. But you could tell it's going to be something we can really go to, that we can really rely on if we're struggling on the offensive end. Maybe we're not hitting our jump shots. Maybe we just need some easy baskets, and he's going to be a guy we can kind of go to in those sort of scenarios. And I thought that it just kind of stood out even more. Like, it's not often you see guys like hitting like hook shots as much in the NBA nowadays. So it was very impressive to see. And I just thought defensively, he had a couple plays where I was like, oh, like, so he had to guard Oso Ighodaro tonight, who's kind of a more mobile big. And there was a few times where I thought he kind of struggled on the perimeter in the pick and roll. But I think that could be all chalked up to miscommunication. So that is going to be like one thing I'm going to say that stood out to where I was like, oh, I don't know. Because they got some really good like pick and roll passes inside where Zubac wasn't able to recover. Or I'm just going to chalk that up to miscommunication for the most part and just not knowing exactly like what our defensive schemes are. So I take that with a grain of salt. I'm just trying to like, that's just something I noticed. But I do think that there was one time in the beginning of the game where he kind of got switched on to Devin Booker. And Devin Booker was, doing his thing, trying to create some moves, but Zubac actually was able to stay in front of him. Devin Booker, he just hit a pull-up jump shot in Zubac's face, so it was a tough shot. And Booker dropped over 40 points tonight, guys. So he was just on it tonight, but I thought Zubac actually did pretty well on the perimeter in front of him, and he forced a hard shot on for Devin Booker. So it wasn't an easy shot at all, and I was very impressed with he was able to just kind of stay in front of him in that regard. And then he had a nice closeout on another three-point shooter during the game. I think it was Jalen Green, where he was kind of mixed in there, where he was the closest guy to Jalen Green, who ended up getting an open jump shot from the three-point line. But Zubac was able to kind of recover and reach out and force a miss. So I just think that I was actually kind of impressed with the way he moved his feet on the perimeter. So I know it's not going to be perfect. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's like the most switchable big in the NBA. He definitely got burned a couple times too, which, like I said, he's just learning the system, and he's getting his feet back under him, of course, from not playing for a little while. But I was impressed with some of those moments where I was like, oh, so maybe he can actually switch onto some guys and somewhat hold his own. He's not going to just get completely destroyed or torch every single time. And I remember hearing that on a podcast where I think it was Setting the Pace. I can't remember where, but they were interviewing somebody about that worked for the Clippers or was talking about the Clippers on their podcast. And they even brought up how Zubac had the ability to kind of guard out on the perimeter sometimes. So it was very appealing to me to see that, where I was like, oh, he's definitely not a slouch on that end, if you get what I'm saying. But I will say another thing too that I won't say was concerning because this first game back, but I didn't really see the level of rim defense that I thought I would see. out of Zubac, and it's his first game back, so I'm not going to really like harp on that too much, but I would like to see him like obviously like defend the rim a little better, and he obviously rebounded really well tonight. He had 6 rebounds in 16 minutes. So imagine stretching that up 32 minutes. That's 12 rebounds. You get what I'm saying? So he rebounded well, offensively, defensively, but just defensively, you could tell like I think he's just gonna have to like work his way back into that kind of shape on the court. And I just thought that another play that really stood out, especially on the offensive end, he had this screen for Nimhard on the 3-point line where he kind of set like a double screen for Nimhard, and Nimhard was just able to get like an easy pull up three. And it's going to highlight how many easy shots guys are going to be able to get off of these Zubats pick and rolls, where even if it's not them getting their own shot, Zubats is going to be such a monster target inside where, like I said earlier, he's so good at like sealing guys off on the inside and being able to create that space to get like lob passes inside to him, where he's either going to be able to finish inside with the left hook or a right hook, or he's going to hit somebody with a pass that's either cutting baseline or cutting down the lane, depending on where he's at. I really trust his ability to find the open man or at least finish inside on his own. So just a few things that really stood out to me, guys. Like I said, he finished his game with 8 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists in 16 minutes. So it wasn't like a ton that you really got to see, but I'm not going to lie, I was super hyped when I saw that Zubac was starting tonight, that he was actually making his debut. And you could tell the crowd was like really backing Zubac. If you get what I'm saying, they were really hyped up for him. I think they were really excited to see him, just like we all are, Pacer Nation. I think we were all excited to finally see him play. And I think there's a way throughout the rest of this season where we can work Zubac into the games and like actually play him in these games and not jeopardize our chances of like losing basketball games, because obviously that was still the main focus tonight, guys, because Zubac and Nimhard both, they only played in the first half. Then we played the second unit, essentially the whole entire second half. So we were able to at least get him out there on the court for the first time, see what he's going to look like with this team. And I think that's what matters the most. So what really stood out, I'll go over it again a little bit briefly here. His physical presence inside, I thought was just very apparent from the get-go. Something even like more so than Sabonis, I would say, even though Sabonis was very strong inside too. But like, I don't remember the last time we had a big like this outside of Sabonis that was this much of a presence inside. So that was very apparent. And then he was just solid screen setting the entire night. Like I said, on that one play for Nimhard, I think that's going to be a very underrated aspect of his game that he's going to bring to this team. And I just thought he was comfortable finishing around the rim with the left hook, right hooks, with the little push shot from right inside the mid range free throw line, and then just with the alley oop finish. I mean, he's got a variety of different ways. And something that something that really stood out to me too. Whenever he did his introductory press conference, he talked about how the coaching staff wanted to work on him kind of being in the corner more, out on the 3-point line a little bit more or further out. But in this game, he just strictly played in the dunker spot. And I don't think it really ruined any of our spacing at all either. I don't think it really affected it in that sort of way. I do think that guys were still able to get to the paint if they wanted, and they also had, like I said, a lob pass to Zubac who could do something inside. I didn't think it really affect the spacing too well. Obviously, it's just like one game, so we have to see how this is going to progress, Pacer Nation, but I wasn't concerned with that at all. And honestly, that's his strength. He's one of the best guys in the dunker spot in the NBA. So I'll be curious to see how that goes moving forward. If he even starts playing every game, or if it's like how we've been with Siakam and all those guys right now, where every other game they're sitting, or we're just going to have to see how that goes, Pacer Nation. But that's something else that really stood out to me. And then just his passing awareness, I thought was very impressive too. And then just things to watch moving forward, like I said earlier, was just a defensive rim protection. I know he's one of the best rim protectors in the NBA, but in this game, I was a little surprised about how, I don't want to say lackluster, just how much I didn't see on that end. So I would like to see more of that. And I think it's just going to come with chemistry in due time. And then the pick and roll chemistry with the Pacers guards, like I said, there was a few plays there where I just think there was some miscommunication and guys were able to get easy open layups passed to them for finishes inside. So be on the lookout for that too. I'm going to continue to keep an eye on that as well. And just the conditioning and pace within the Pacer system, I'm going to keep an eye on that too. If he continues to just kind of getting even more into the Pacers style of play shape. Kind of the same way, like I said, Jay Huff has kind of had to do since he's joined the team. It took him a while, of course, and it may take Zubac the rest of this year and then going into the offseason, you never know, but that's not even the main thing. It's just about getting him worked into our ecosystem, our offensive ecosystem, defensive ecosystem, and just seeing how he's going to fit, how we can best play to his strengths, and how he can fit into our strengths as well as a basketball team. But all in all, super exciting game to see, even though we lost, which is still a great outcome because we won a top pick. And that's going to lead me into my next segment, guys. So, as I haven't been able to cover some of these latest games, but I know we lost to the Kings, right? Which was the perfect outcome. And I want to give a shout out to Devin Carter first off for the Sacramento Kings. Thank you for coming in and dropping 24 points in the second half to lead the Kings to a win over us, even though we were up by like 20 points late into the third quarter. I want to thank you, Devin Carter, for giving the Kings the win, as we now own the worst record in the NBA. But as I say that, I want to go over a little bit of draft history, guys. So I've done this in a couple of episodes ago, I believe, where at that time we were the second worst team in the NBA. So now that we're the worst team, I want to look back at all the drafts since the NBA flattened the lottery odds. And I want to just show teams that finished with the worst record, where did they end up picking in that draft? So this was pretty eye-opening, guys. So I know that we're all cheering for losses as a Pacer fans. I know that I know that sounds bad as a Pacer fan. It sounds bad to cheer for losses, but we know what's at stake here, guys. So we don't even have to like digress into that. But the fact that this is what really stood out to me after I go over this list with you guys. It was very kind of shocking. Teams that finished with the worst record, where they ended up picking. So in 2018 and 19, the New York Knicks finished with the worst record in the NBA. And they ended up with the third overall pick in that draft where they drafted RJ Barrett. So going into the next season, the 2019-2020 draft, the Warriors had the worst record in the NBA, believe it or not. So if you want to talk about a team that is kind of more that we are aligned with in that regard, where it was a team that was title contention, was already at the top, and then they had this weird gap year where they just bottomed out because of all these injuries. This is who I would like say we're the most comparative to. But in that year, the Warriors got the second overall pick where they took James Wiseman. So if you want to like take a silver lining from this whole thing I'm about to go over, guys, that's the one I would focus on. But then going into the 2020-2021 season, the Houston Rockets had the worst record in the NBA. They finished with the second overall pick that year, and they took Jalen Green in that draft. So then going into the 2021-22 season, or draft, excuse me, the Rockets still had the worst record in the NBA, and they ended up picking third in that draft, and they got Jabari Smith Jr. So some decent players here and there. I mean, obviously James Wiseman, not great. RJ Barrett, mixed bag. The Rockets with Jalen Green, whoever you talk to, maybe not a terrible second overall pick, but not really what you hope for. Then the Rockets with Jabari Smith Jr., solid player, but at number 3, you kind of hope for more, right? But then this is where it gets interesting, guys. This is where the panic starts to creep in a little bit if you're worried about us having the worst record and where it's kind of led in the past. So in the 2022-23 season, the Detroit Pistons had the worst record in the NBA. They ended up with the 5th overall pick. So I think that was either Asar Thompson, or Jaden Ivey, whichever. I think that was Jaden Ivey. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it's one of those two guys. So then going into the next draft, the 2023-24 draft, the Detroit Pistons again had the worst record in the NBA. They land at the 5th overall pick. So, and then, like I said, that's where they get probably Asar Thompson or Jaden Ivey. I'm not sure which one. So then, going into last year's draft, guys, the Utah Jazz had the worst record in the NBA. They end up with the 5th overall pick, where they took Ace Bailey. So, it looks really bad the last 3 years, guys. As we know, if our pick falls out of the top 4, we lose the pick. So if we're going off the last 3 years, none of those teams that had the worst record ended up with the top 4 pick. Now, maybe you could say, all right, this year it's time for a change. This is the year where, we're like the Warriors, where they ended up with the top 3 pick. Maybe you could say that. I'm just saying this is what past history has shown us, guys, is that the last 3 drafts, they have fallen out of the top 4, which would be catastrophic for us. It's hard to imagine that that would happen again. If we end up with the worst record in the NBA, I can't imagine that we end up falling out of the top 4, but I know none of these other teams did either. I know Detroit Piston fans did not think that they would fall out of the top 4 at least, or they thought for sure they would get a top 2 pick. So if you look at it like that, the last 3 drafts make it very concerning. But if you look at the 4 drafts before that, it was teams either finishing with the 3rd overall pick or the 2nd overall pick. But I will say this, the key takeaways from this, guys, the worst team has not won the number 1 pick since the odds were flattened by the NBA. And that is pretty eye-opening, guys. Maybe we can be the outlier this year that where it finally happens, but the history has shown since the NBA has flattened these lottery odds, then the worst team in the NBA has not got the top overall pick. And then the average outcome has been around the 3rd or 4th pick. So if you're taking the average, you'll take that all day if you're a Pacer fan, because we at least keep our top 4 picks. So if we at least stay in that average, you can go home happy, Pacer Nation. I would be happy, of course. You always want the number 1 overall pick, but if that wasn't the case, I would not be disappointed if we end up with the 3rd or 4th pick. But the last 3 seasons, like I said, every worst team in the NBA finished with the 5th overall pick. So that's pretty concerning, but if you look at it on the glass, or let's say glass half full side, not glass half empty side, you'll say, oh, well, the 4 years before that, they at least kept a top 4 pick or top 3 pick. So I'm going to look at it glass half full and just hope that this will be the outlier year where we've already had 3 years in a row where the team got they fell all the way to 5th if they had the worst record. So I can't believe that's going to happen again. But why this happens, guys, like I said, the worst 3 teams each get a 14% chance at the number 1 overall pick. So with the flattened odds, that's why this can happen so easily. It's just so spread out now where the odds just favor almost any team inside the top 10. And the worst team actually has about a 48% chance of falling to pick number 5. So we have a 52% of keeping a top 4 pick, 48% of landing the number 5th pick. So I'm sure everybody's heard that by now, but I wanted to go over the history of what the worst teams in the NBA ended up picking in their drafts since the NBA flattened their lottery odds. I just thought it was very telling. I thought it was very interesting. So finishing with the worst record is basically a coin flip between a top 4 pick and dropping in number 5. So maybe that just further enhances like what it's always going to been all along. If we end up with like a bottom through like 3 or 4 record, it's going to be the same scenario. So I just thought it was very interesting, guys. In closing, just let me know what you guys think about Zubac's performance tonight. What did you like? What did you not like? What do you hope to see moving forward from Zubac? Let me know in the YouTube comments. And I miss conversing with you guys. I know it's been a little while since I posted on YouTube. So I really hope you go over there, check this out. And just, did anything stand out from you from his first game? And what do you think about the NBA's flat lottery odds? And what do you think about the past history of the worst teams not landing the number 1 overall pick, the last 3 drafts, them picking the number 5th pick overall? Just let me know what you guys think about that. Do you think we're going to buck that trend if we end up with the worst pick, or the worst team in the NBA? Let me know in the YouTube comments what you think, guys. Would love to hear you guys' thoughts and opinions. And as always, Pacer Nation, I can't thank you enough for listening to this podcast. It means a lot to me, and I'm going to be on here consistently from now on, guys. I'm fully, at least moved, still trying to get things settled, but my wife and I, we've had such a busy month, essentially. That's why I've been kind of hit or miss with some of these episodes. But now that I'm settled back in, I'm ready to get back into the groove of doing these episodes. And I just appreciate you guys understanding and sticking with me, Pacer Nation. But if you could please leave a like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, it would mean a lot. It helps the channel grow, and it just really helps me grow this platform. And then if you could please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to your podcast at, I would truly appreciate it. If you could listen on both platforms as well, YouTube, Spotify, the listening platforms as well. Would really mean a lot, guys. Helps me grow this. I want to make this the number 1 Pacer fan podcast out there, guys. So I want to build that community. And I have some ideas of things I want to do in the future. And just, I can't do it without your guys' help. So it would mean a lot to me, and I fully appreciate it, Pacer Nation. But I'm going to do another episode here soon, probably tomorrow. I'm going to try to come up with something, but be on the lookout for that. But as always, Pacer Nation, I will talk to you soon.